Hey my friends, this is Sylvie Curry, Lady of Q, and once again I am in my kitchen. Today I'm going to be cooking oxtails. Yep, oxtails. I've got about 4.5 pounds of oxtails that I'm going to cook in a Jamaican style. I'm not going to say anything about this is authentic, I just say Jamaican style. I've never tried it this way, but I saw some videos and I saw some other people do it over the last couple of weeks, and I said, well, hey, I can do that too. So let's do this. Oxtails today. These are my ingredients for my oxtails. I've got 4.5 pounds of oxtails, which I've washed, cleaned, and washed again. So they're pretty clean. I also cut off a lot of the extra fat. There's a lot of fat on these oxtails, but I got the big bulk of the fat that was hanging on. I have here 1 onion diced. I've got 2 shallots diced, bell pepper, which is orange and red bell pepper. I've got some garlic, and this is about 5 cloves of garlic. I've got ginger. This is about 1 inch of ginger cut up into slices. I've got about 2 stalks of celery. I've got a tomato here that's already diced, and I've got another one here that I'm waiting to thaw out so I can dice it up. I've got green onions, which I cut into little slices. Here I have beef bouillon, that's a cup. Moving right along, I've got some brownie liquid, and this is brownie liquid that I made myself. I've got some thyme, a number of twigs of that. I've got here 2 tablespoons of soy sauce, 1 tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce. I've got 2 teaspoons of onion powder. I've got a teaspoon of allspice, a teaspoon of black pepper, a couple of teaspoons of garlic powder. Underneath the garlic powder is some salt, and that's about 2 teaspoons of salt. I've got a teaspoon of paprika. That's 2 teaspoons of ground ginger, and about a cube of chicken bouillon. I'm going to marinate these oxtails first and a lot of the seasonings. I'm going to take my measured content and sort of just mix it up together, and that way we'll have a more equal blend of spices to go onto the oxtails to get a better blend on them and to make sure that it's distributed all over. So just mix that up. Then I'm going to pour that over the oxtail, all of it. I've got my Worcestershire sauce. I'm going to coat that over. I've got my soy sauce. I'm going to coat that. I've got my brownie mixture. And I'm going to start by trying to drizzle it over everything, and then seeing if that's not working very well. I knew I'm going to have to do this. I'm going to take one of the small pieces of oxtails and just pull it over. It's pretty thick because I had it in the refrigerator, so it. Now that I've got that coated, I'm going to take my thyme, and you can also use dried thyme. I just so happen to have this in my garden, so I'll distribute that in there. And then I'm going to put about half or a little less of my onions, shallots, bell pepper, celery, ginger, garlic, and some of the green onions. I'm going to put that in there. We're going to mix that up so that it can marinate, and we'll save the other vegetables to add later throughout the cooking process. So let's get back in there and coat this all up. Put it in the refrigerator. Leave it there. I'm only going to get maybe about 3 hours of marinating time on this. It's preferable to do this overnight, and you get a better penetration of these spices and herbs and aromatics over these oxtails. Now remember, I said that I by no means will call this an authentic. This is a Jamaican style oxtail recipe. Over the last month, I had the opportunity to watch someone actively making oxtails, and it was a process I thought that was just so different, or making oxtails in this style. I usually do my oxtails in a red wine braise, but this is going to be different. One of the things that's not in here, and I'm going to add later, I don't have a Scotch bonnet or habanero pepper, but I do have some dried serrano peppers that I'm going to put in during the cooking process. Forgot to add that to my ingredient list. Okay, so let's let this bathe for a while and we'll come back to it. The oxtails have been in the refrigerator marinating for a couple hours. Now I'm going to go through the process of sauteing them or browning them to get ready to braise. One of the first steps in this is I'm going to wipe off a lot of the veggies on there because I don't want those to burn as the oxtails brown. I have my large Dutch oven set up. And I've got some avocado oil in there, and I'm using avocado oil because it has a higher burning point. I've got the oil heating up, and I'm going to saute starting with the larger pieces of the oxtails, and then I'll move on to doing the smaller ones after the big ones are finished. The oil's hot. It's important to not cloud the Dutch oven because you want to make sure that it doesn't steam, but that it does fry. I added some water to deglaze, and now I'm going to add all the other oxtails back. I'm going to add enough water to cover the meat, and then I'm going to let that simmer, and we'll come back to it in a little bit. The amount of water that you add is going to vary depending upon how many oxtails you have and what it takes to cover them. We've been boiling for about 10-12 minutes, and now I'm going to add the veggies that were in the marinade with the oxtails. After adding that and giving it a good mix, I'm going to put the Dutch oven cover back on, and we'll let that go for a couple hours and test for doneness. This is about an hour and a half into the cook. I'm going to have to top it off with more water, and we're also going to be adding the vegetables that we had from the beginning that we didn't use. I think I did mention that I didn't have any Scotch bonnet or habanero peppers, but I do have a dried serrano that I did put in here. And that should give it a little heat. Those are pretty heavy heat for me. Here I'm adding more water to top it off, because we're nowhere near tender yet. And I think I mentioned before that it's very hard to determine how much water you're going to add, because you don't know what the reduction is going to be during the cook, nor how many, how fast it's going to reduce, nor how many oxtails you're going to have per water that you need. So I'm just stirring those around and trying to get, if there's anything sticking on the bottom, trying to get that off. And we're smelling really good in here. I'm also going to be adding the veggies that I had earlier. And I don't want that bouillon in there yet. And we'll let that cook some more. We'll come back to it, test for tenderness, taste for salt, and we'll be approaching, right now we're at about 2 hours and 15 minutes. This is about 2 hours in. Still not tender, and we didn't expect to be. Just put some more water in it, and we'll cook until fork tender. Smelling real good though. Wow. My oxtails are tender. They're ready. So now I'm going to add the beans. And I'm going to be using cannellini beans because I could not find any of the butter beans in the store. And time-wise, I didn't have time to get some lima beans ready to substitute. So we're going to go with the cannellini. I'm going to first add the broth that I had earlier. And because we're going to cook this about another 30 minutes with the beans in it. And we're going to go for the last reduction. I'll taste once it's almost time, because once we reduce, a lot of that seasoning and salt content is going to reduce and be concentrated. So I've also got my bouillon cube. Put that in, and yes, I know that has a bit of salt in it, but it also has some flavor that we need to add to this. And last but not least, I've got my cannellini beans. They're not as buttery as a butter bean, but they're still a little bit creamy. So they'll substitute this time. And we put those in the last 30 minutes of the cook because they're actually already done. We just need to heat them up. And they may add a little bit of creaminess to these oxtails while they're thickening up, while the gravy's thickening up. Oh yeah. We'll let that reduce some more and thicken up. And if we don't get the gravy we need, we can add a little bit of cornstarch and thicken it up.